Okay.
You're on camera.
His name is
Yeah.
Chapter.
Okey dokey,
Sorry.
no problem. Let's move into current times now. So any questions on the history of the jack? It's been around for a long time, it's been reinvented a couple of times, and right now it is in the process of an evolution. It's moving, it's growing, it's changing, just like the whole cosmos is changing and growing.
What's an archdeacon?
An archdeacon is something that may have been a while ago, but I don't think it exists anymore. I don't know what an archdeacon would be. There was, used to be 7 or 8 different offices in the church. Now there's 3. Okay, so I don't have any idea what an archdeacon, I doubt seriously they exist.
It's the assistant for a villain priest.
So, when you get through this process of the discernment and become a deacon, then things will change. And I think you will find the changes will be, could be drastic, let me put it that way. Now, everybody here is currently working, is that, I think so, okay. Greg, you're obviously an airline captain, flying an aircraft, big one. Probably in charge of your own, you supervise yourself, let me put it that you make decisions. Everybody here is in a position, as I understand it, of making decisions. The state of Utah retirement system, Jeff. You make decisions that affect people's income, retirement income, things. Greg makes decisions that could be life or death decisions, certain times. Tom, originally an auditor in all this ATK, missiles and all this, a tremendous amount of responsibilities, all right? And you probably, if you don't supervise people, you supervise activities, but you have an effect on a wide-ranging group of people. When you become a deacon, let's go back to the original The one thing I hate about whiteboards is that they don't have spell check.
Yeah.
I have a terrible speller. But anyway, the original deacons were set up as servants. In 2,000 years, that hasn't changed. So you'll go from a position that you've been in for many years of authority and decision-making and everything else, and you are going to step into the role of a servant. And basically, you really have no authority, and you don't really make a lot of decisions. Hopefully, you'll have input into the decisions that are being made concerning your parish. What do I mean by that? The deacon reports to the bishop. He works at the discretion of the bishop. Where the bishop thinks he needs help, if he thinks you can help him, he's going to say, I want you to do this. And you're probably going to say yes, okay? So you're going to go into that job. Generally, it'll be in your own parish. Your own parish has a priest, and if it's a big parish, that priest will be designated as a pastor. Now, the same as a bishop controls the Church of Christ in a geographic area, the pastor, who works also directly for the bishop, controls the Church of Christ in his parish. So what that amounts to is, even though we report to the bishop, we have a dotted line, a serious dotted line, reporting structure to the pastor. The bishop, because he is a successor of Peter, has the ability, if it's not a heresy, to direct the church in his diocese the way that he thinks is best for the church. He delegates that responsibility to the pastors of the parish that work for him to do the same in their parishes. That's why when you go to different churches, you will see the liturgies having a few different tweaks here and there, depends upon the priest. The deacon, assigned by the bishop to a pastor, works within the structure that the pastor has set up for his church, whether you like it or not. All right? So generally, those decisions by pastors and bishops are made by the pastor and the bishop. If you're fortunate, you will get a pastor that has regular meetings with his deacons and seeks their input. But the Catholic Church today is not a democracy. It's never been a democracy.
Never has been.
It never has been. I doubt we'll ever see it be one. But we do have input into what's going on. We don't make the decision of what goes on. That, based on the background of the authority that everybody usually comes into this job with, is a tough thing. There are deacons that have a real problem making that transition. And that creates a problem in the parish community that unfortunately, has to be dealt with.
Does a deacon ever find himself in conflict with what the bishop wants to do and what the pastor wants to do?
He can, and yes, that happens. That happens quite a bit.
Could you give me an example of that?
I'd rather not, but I'll just tell you that it happens. But it happens because the understanding of being a servant, opening yourself, getting rid of your ego, is probably the toughest thing, toughest transition a person has to make when they become a deacon. Because it really has to go away. Because there will be times when you say, no, I'm going to do this my way. And if it gets crossways, with the pastor, there's a problem. Because always remember, pastor works for the bishop, he's in charge of his parish, the bishop's in charge of his diocese. If you get crosswise with any of those two, there's a problem. So this is the lowest rank of ordination in the Catholic Church. It is the level of a servant, and that's especially if you've worked in many different jobs and things like this. It's a tough thing to get yourself to. So for the next year or 2 or 3 or whatever, how long is this program anyway?
He said January of 2020, thereabouts.
2020, okay. It's something to think about through these times, because it will require a transition. There's just no two ways about it. If you don't, there will be a problem. And I see it, unfortunately, that falls under my bailiwick too, because there's a vicar of clergy, that's Monsignor Colin Birkinshaw, and whenever there's any kind of a problem concerning a deacon, whatever it is, I get the phone call or a text real quick. So, and I work on that and then report to him and what's going on and try to work this thing through. The object is that everything flows in harmony, but there is an opportunity, because of the structure of the church, for these things to spring up. Where you say, no, we should do this, we should do that, or I'm going to start this program. I have had too many experiences. One of them I will tell you, when you get the faculty to preach, now, let's talk about faculties. I mean, we just got through that. You're granted the faculty to preach as a deacon. Whether you preach or not is entirely the responsibility of the pastor. And they will set it up. There are pastors, if you look at the whole structure of the liturgies, and when they talk about preaching, when Rome talks about preaching, the preferred preacher will always be the presider of the Mass. And the presider at a Mass has to be a priest in order for it to be Mass. The deacon can't not do the consecration in other parts of the Mass. We just don't have the faculties for it. So the preferred way is to have the priest do the homily. Now, a lot of priests will say, okay, we're going to set up a rotation schedule here. And in my church, when we preach all the Masses for the weekend. Some churches do that. We each take one weekend a month, basically. The priest will do some stuff. So in my case, when I preach, which is next weekend, I'll do 4 Masses, 1 Saturday and 3 Sundays. And that's just a long haul.
Are you doing the liturgy for all 4 of those Masses, or are you just showing up to do the homily?
No, I do the liturgy. I'm there for 4 full Masses. Generally, they won't have you preach unless you assist the presider in the Mass to read the Gospel and then preach. That's the tie that they look to have. Generally, in the Masses, when you're simply assisting in a Mass and not preaching, you will, the deacon will, if there is a deacon on the altar, read the Gospel. See these 3 things here? This is our bishop's idea of the deacons that he wants in his diocese. We are the deacon of the Word. We spread the Word of God in the community, we preach, and we read the Gospel. And we read the Gospel with liturgically, let's put it that way. So it's a lot of work. You'll get into that, and you'll get a lot of practice at it and all this. And when you're doing your preaching practicum and things like this, you'll be working with, I think, Deacon Michael Bielsen. Yeah, and so you'll get a pretty good education into what that's all about too. And you'll be researching different methods for doing that. Second thing we are deacons of justice in the community. What does that mean? Here's what it means. We are a very divergent church. We have a lot of diversity in our church. If you're not bilingual, English, Spanish, becoming bilingual is a tough thing to do. But what is not so tough to do is to get to the point where at least if you're English speaking only, you're able to read the prayers properly with pronunciations and all in Spanish. So if you have to assist at a Spanish Mass, you're able to read the gospel. You're able to say the prayers, even if you're reading them off a sheet. You don't have to memorize them. And then oftentimes something will go with that. A lot of guys that I know, and I myself am working on this, will have their homily, English homilies, transposed into Spanish by somebody in the local community, and they will work with that to do the homily also, so it becomes complete. So that would be something you need to think about. Second thing with justice is because we are one church, a very diverse church. What the deacon, and this is, we have priests that I work with, and I know our bishop is very adamant about this. We have to recognize and be part of that diversity, whether we speak the language or not. That means that there would be attendance, or if you're not participating, but at least attendance in special things that are going on in these different diverse communities. You're a deacon for everybody. Whether you speak Spanish or not, doesn't mean you can't go to a Spanish Mass, observe, you can't go to a quinceanera, things like this, when people, you've got to be present, you have to be present, the deacon has to be present to the entire parish community. So that's an issue. And then, of course, what follows with that is charity. And according to Paul, faith, hope, and charity, which also has been translated into faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. We use that in the marriage, matrimony liturgies. And that means that's what we present, that's what the deacon presents to the community, is this openness, and here I am, and I'm here to help you, truly help you, with whatever goes on. And they would be getting some training in the pastoral effects of that. And then, of course, there's the liturgical effect, and you cannot forget those two, and you can't separate them and say, I'm only going to do the liturgies, or I'm only going to be pastoral. That you will have to be both.
So Bob, this justice that you described, it sounds like just interacting with the Latino community. What about social justice? Does that fit into that?
Yes, absolutely, social justice. Now, you have to be careful there. Let's talk about homilies again. And it happens, you're going to get beat to death, and I'm in charge of working with the ongoing formation of the permanent deacons, which means we send out a lot of material from here. I'll give you some of it. And we do one major retreat a year right now, And I think that's gonna change, and we're gonna do some smaller type activities and things like this, but we try to do a lot of training. We try to give the deacons access that they may not have to a lot of information. A lot of it comes from a national basis, the USCCB and other things. Now remember again, the key factor in what you're going to be doing in your parish lies right there with the pastor. Example, right now, especially lately with what's going on in the world and in the United States, there's a lots of conversation, lots of things going on about gun control. All right, we have had archbishops, bishops, we've had all kinds of Catholics in different parts of the country make statements about what is going on and so forth in the social justice aspect of this. If you were a deacon in a church and you're saying, okay, I'm up for the homily today, but I think I'm going to add in this thing on gun control. I will tell you, if you deviate on your homily from scripturally what is there, then you need to run it by the pastor. Because if he does not want the gun control issue to come up in his congregation right at this particular time, that's his decision. If you make it on your own and do it, there's a problem. So this gets back to the relationship. I'm telling you, you're going to have to you'll find yourself working in, and you have to do the best you can working in that relationship. But the way to do that
I'll be preaching.
is and he can do this.
It's
That gets me to that deal. The pastor can take one of those faculties away in a heartbeat. He can say, okay, if you're going to do it that way, I'm not going to have you preach.
Yeah.
And you're done in that parish. Preaching.
Yeah.
All right? It can happen. And it does. If, from the servant viewpoint, you say to yourself, I want to do this, and go to the pastor and say, here's what I'm thinking, here's my homily, here's what I'd like to do, he might say, okay, go ahead, or no, I don't want to do it, and here's the reason why. Okay, hopefully, that will solve the situation. But if you go ahead and do it, I'll just give you a little hint that if there's ever a conflict between a priest and a deacon over rubrics and things that are going on in the parish, you have to have a priest to have a mass or to have a parish, because the priest can do things that a deacon can't. So in those conflict areas,
You come in second place.
the priest wins.
Priest drums.
Just know that going in.
Priest drums the deacon.
Just know that going in. That's one of the things that is a problem. Okay, does that answer your question? Kurt?
Yes.
Okay. Of course you are. Now, so we've got that. You work for the priest, the pastor, and you pretty much work under his guidelines. Like I say, there are pastors that hold regular meetings with the deacons that look for that input. If you get one of those situations, God bless you. I also know deacons that have worked in parishes for years that have probably never had one of those meetings because the priest just doesn't do it. It's just, here it is, this is, all right. We talked about the pastoral aspect, a little bit about the pastoral aspect of being a deacon, and that is where we get into these two things right here. This is the liturgical aspect. This is the pastoral aspect. And our bishop right now wants the deacons, because we also, once again, a lot of this has to do with what you mentioned with the deacons' age, a lot of them being older, and retired and tired and sick and things like this. We have a lot of that. They work on the weekend, and they do the mass, and they go home. That's not the real job of a deacon. The real job of a deacon lies in the community. And there will be programs coming down the pike in the next couple of years to try to re-emphasize that and get it going again. We are a church that is open to everybody, but we are a church especially for the poor. And so consequently, the deacon will become heavily involved, hopefully, heavily involved in things outside of simply going to the 9:30 Mass on Sunday morning and assisting at the altar. All right?
Question. So you talked about getting the priest's permission for adding gun control into the home.
Yeah.
Let's say that there's a demonstration down at the federal building about gun control.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take it upon yourself to show up there as a deacon, or do you clear that with the priest as well?
Personally, this is just a personal opinion, I'd tell them that you have strong feelings on the gun control issue and that you plan on being there. But you're not there representing the parish or the church, you're there as an individual.
Okay.
But I'd let him know.
Okay.
The fewer secrets that you have,
The better.
the better off you're going to be. When you start to develop programs, teaching programs and things like this, so I want to start a Bible study program. You don't just start the Bible study program. You tell the pastor, here's what I'd like to do and here's why. And so consequently, this is a role reversal for all of us, you know? I worked for a major international corporation in my business career for 40 years. And this was a major adjustment, let me tell you. Just getting back into that facet of where I was when I started out, 40 years ago. So, but it's the way it is. And nothing's going to change that.
So in the diocese, are you the head deacon for the diocese?
No, there is no head deacon for the diocese.
That's the archdeacon.
There's, yeah.
There we go.
That's the
Found out what that is.
No, I'm the deacon that tries to have a coordinated effort that deacons continue the learning process throughout their career. When you're ordained, it's not like, it's like marriage. I'll get into marriage. Yeah, I got time. It's not like turning on a light switch, and the room goes bright. You say, oh God, this is great, Now, you turn on the light switch, but it's very dim. What you want to do is to make the light on the rheostat get brighter. You do that through continuing education. A deacon's learning, your learning process, is not going to end with ordination. Matter of fact, it probably is just going to continue on from where you're at. It's like being married. You have a period of engagement and things like this, and then there's that wonderful day when you're married, and then you move on. Well, what your learnings are in all this continue to keep going, and you don't really get to, in marriage, a state where you're truly one soul, one individual, for several years, until you build that relationship to where it is a relationship, basically, of where you're tied together spiritually, truly tied together spiritually. Same is true with the deacon. Because you are now in a once again, same situation. Church has two sacraments of vocation. Sacrament of holy orders, the sacrament of marriage. The reason that those are sacraments is both of those are a covenant, not a contract. You know the difference? The difference is a covenant you can't break. Marriage and holy orders. Marriage, the two people that are forming this partnership and want to make it permanent, declare their intentions to one another in their vows. And they also declare those vows not only to one another, but to God. So those two people marry themselves, in essence. Everybody else there is just a witness. When you get into holy orders, whether it's the diaconate or the priesthood, you declare a covenant with God that will last a lifetime, the same as marriage. That's what makes them sacraments. It is a covenant that the person knowingly and willingly makes with his Creator. Same with marriage. And that's why they're sacraments. Makes sense?
Parallelism between the two.
There is a parallel.
And there's
There's
absolutely
tremendous
no
parallel.
conflict at all.
Well,
Well, no, conflict exists.
yeah.
Conflict can
I'll get
exist,
to
but
that.
that's,
I'll get to that in a
but
minute.
that can be
Yeah,
man-made conflict.
that's right, and that's what it usually is.
Yeah.
And that's what it usually is. But let's stick with just being the deacon piece, all right? It is something to think about, because, you know, if you're a hard charger and get things done and boom like this and take control, that could cause problems.
That'll be me.
You need to be aware of it.
I'll have to fight that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's,
See that?
I had to do that too. I mean, it's just something you have to force yourself to learn. All right? So, it's something to think about. Something that probably doesn't come up in a lot of conversations, but the pastor is the guy that basically you have to form a relationship with. It does not have to be a buddy-buddy deal, but you do have to work under the vision that he has for his parish, whatever that vision is. And the visions will change from individual pastor to pastor to pastor. And it's kind of the luck of the draw on that one.
If you find yourself in a situation where it seems
We
unbearable.
have ways of working with that.
Okay.
But that's a process, okay?
The bishop's a director, or your priest is your immediate supervisor.
Basically, that's it.
You know?
Yeah.
I knew a deacon who couldn't put up with a new pastor, and so he got reassigned.
Yeah.
How involved
I
was
mean,
that?
it's the,
Just out of curiosity.
here's the problem from the diocese standpoint, all right? When I go in and look at these situations and all this, and I work with Monsignor on this column, when we go in and look at these situations, the object is the real purpose of a deacon, if you could sum that up in one sentence,
Servant.
the sentence is this: the purpose of a deacon is to make it as convenient as possible for the priest to pray. Here's what that means, and we'll take it apart from liturgies and things like this. If you are working well with your priest, then you are making it possible for him to pray on behalf of the community, for the community, so forth, etc. In the liturgy, it's the same thing. If he's got a particular way he wants the book placed and things like this, do things that make it convenient for the priest to flow through that liturgy so that he can concentrate on the prayers of the assembly. And the same is true with work outside of that assembly. Things that you're doing, if you do them in a manner so it doesn't conflict with the way you know he wants things done in his parish, you are doing exactly what a deacon should do, and making it easy for the priest to pray. And that's what we do. And we try to help that along by offering suggestions or offering to do things for the community it will help that whole situation. Make sense? So that's what we need to look for as deacons. And it can be in a liturgy, it can be outside of liturgy in the community. But we need to do whatever we possibly can to avoid that conflict. There are personality issues, absolutely there will be. And we look to try to get a situation where the priest can function as he should function, and where the deacon can function, where he should, to the best of his abilities, to use his talents within that environment that's set here. All right? So when that's not happening, then yeah, we're not going to remove the priest. But we'll look at things that we can get so the deacon can be productive also. Because deacons, obviously, bring a great deal. Deacons bring a great deal to offer the community. They need to have an environment that they can make those offerings. Okay? Part of the discernment process, which you're into. How do you discern that? The best possible way of discerning that, and one that if you don't have it now, and I know that they're working to give you ideas and things like this on it, is your prayer life. You need to have a structured prayer life. And I always like to use the word, I'm a Christian. My faith is Christian. I have a faith in Jesus Christ. I choose to practice my faith through the Catholic discipline. Why do I use discipline? Why? What is a discipline? Discipline's a regimentation that you do over and over and over again. You eat certain foods. If you eat healthy, you watch your diet. That's a discipline. If you want to stay physically healthy, a lot of people have an exercise discipline. They do it, they exercise on a regular basis. Prayer needs to be exercised on a regular basis. It can be any one of a number of things. I'm going to give you a handout. Take one. This is from the Deacons Retreat from 2015. It's an article that was taken out of a book written by, or put together by Deacon Keating, who is a theologian and is at one of the colleges. I can't remember which one, but it's from articles. This article just happens to have been written, this chapter happens to have been written by Owen Cummings, whom you're reading as one of his books right now. But it talks about prayer and the necessity of having an active prayer life. Now, there's a lot of underlinings in it because this was my copy. There are parts of it, but he talks about different forms of prayer and things like this that you can do. And that starts on page 100 and starts with adoration. Page 171. If you open up to that page like this, he talks about main kinds of prayer. Adoration is one. It's a knowledge of God as God. And you pray to God. This is a communication that you have with God. There's a prayer of contrition. You're asking for something. You're taking ownership of doing something wrong. You're taking ownership of doing something right and recognizing the person that has helped you, the entity that has helped you do that right in the first place. Remember, without God's help, we can do nothing. That's text, biblical text. There's prayers of thanksgiving on 174. It gives you an idea of what this is all about. Prayers of supplication. This is tremendously important when you get out and working in the community. where you are, this is a mode of prayer in which we ask God on behalf of others or for ourselves for help in certain matters. Usually, these are health matters, all right? I'm a classic example. I'm testimony in itself of the power of prayer when it comes to prayers of supplication. I have cancer, and it is an incurable type of cancer, but it has gone into remission for the time being because the community got together and there was a huge amount of prayers that were offered up, prayers of supplication. Prayer is, you can look at the miracles that have happened in the past. All of those have to do with the strength of communal prayer. There is nothing stronger than that for the community to get together. Other forms of prayer that you can do on a regular basis, Lectio Divina, great way. There's also centering prayer. And I was lucky many years ago to go to a seminar where Father Thomas Keating, who was a Trappist monk, talked about and is considered to be the father of centering prayer. And that's where you sit quietly and close your eyes and just clear your mind of everything and let God talk to you. That's a tough thing to do, but it's good to practice. If you can get into the habit of doing that, it's a marvelous, marvelous, marvelous tool. But I've never had God talk back to me, but I have had what I consider to be signs that send me some direction. There's always something that happens if you're looking for it that will give you an idea of the direction that you should be going in. But you have to be open to look for it. You have to have a prayer regimen, and it can change from time to time, but it should be one that's done daily. And we talk about ritual prayers, the ritual prayers, the liturgy of the hours. That's a ritual prayer. It's, prayers are said in the morning, we got the morning prayer, we got the evening prayer, the hinge prayers, the ones that we're really responsible for. Yep.
As a deacon, have you ever done liturgy of the hours with the priest?
Yes.
Like, give me an example when it's convenient for you guys. You're in the office both together and he's going to do a noontime prayer?
Usually, as a matter of fact, if you go to the cathedral, at least on Friday night, I know for sure, I think, and I don't know if they do it every night, they do Vespers, which is evening prayer. And I know they do it on Fridays. And the priest and the deacon will do Vespers. Sometimes the deacon will do Vespers. And they'll lead the community.
How many will attend that?
It varies from parish to parish. A lot of times when I have to do during the week, during the daily weekly mass, rather than doing a scap, if the priest can't make the mass, you get a call, priest says, I can't make it today, can you get up, do a liturgy of the word, which we can do. I usually do morning prayer as the liturgy and we'll add a communion service. All right, so you can use this a great deal when you're called on. And as a matter of fact, we provide, I have a membership here with a group out of New York City, and there are a lot of different ones, but we use this one, and it allows us to bring down a particular prayer, morning prayer for tomorrow, let's say. Well, it's Sunday. For Monday morning, we have to do a liturgy of the word because the priest is out of town for daily mass. So we can bring down Monday morning's morning prayer. We can print it off in booklet style like this and give it to you, and you can hand it out to the people and you can do a morning prayer. So all of these will be available, are available to the diaconate here in the diocese.
Can we have that now?
We have it now? Yes.
Can we have it?
Sure, if you need a copy of it. Yeah.
This service where you can download
Yeah.
the morning prayer already put together.
Right. It's already, it comes from, it comes from a group in New York City. That's where we get it. So we have a license.
So you have a license for that?
We have a license for that.
Yeah, we want that license. We want to share that license.
Then you would have to pay for it.
All right, I'm willing to pay for it.
Okay. Let me know and I'll get you the address of the guy, but yeah, it'll cost you $80 a year.
Wow,
That's what, 20 apiece?
that's great.
Yeah, if you wanted to print it. Now, what I use more than that myself is what I showed you on my phone, the iBreviary, because that's a donation. And I do make a donation to that group every year also. But when I'm traveling and all this, I just pull it, and you pull that down day by day and read it on your phone. And it will take into account everything that's going on that day, whether there's a particular saint or a memorial or et cetera. It's all there. And it's got the missal there too, it's got all kinds of stuff on it, so.
Is that service you use? Because there's one Divine Office. It's usually off a little bit from what the LOH is. Is the service you use, is it the actual LOH from the book? Is it pretty correct?
Well, it depends on which book you're using. The breviary is a little bit different than this one. That breviary, the iBreviary, when you were reading your prayer today, the prayers that I had for this, because this is a memorial for a saint, all right? It was a little bit different than what you guys were reading.
It shouldn't have been, because I cleared that first.
So are you saying it's true to like the 4-volume set? Or
Pardon?
is it true to the 4-volume set?
Yeah, I would think so, but it only has, the 4-volume set has, there's 7 prayers in that. There is the office of reading, which I do every morning, which if you were a monk in a monastery or an abbey, you would read that about 3 o'clock in the morning. You got a long reading. It is an educational process. There's morning prayer. There is midday prayer, 9 o'clock in the morning. There is, mid-morning prayer. Midday prayer, noon. There's mid-afternoon prayer, 3 o'clock. There's evening prayer, 6 o'clock, and there's night prayer just before you go to bed. There's 7 of them in the breviary. I think there's 5 in here.
I looked at the iBreviary today and it was just weird.
So it depends on what you use. They're all basically the same. They're all approved, obviously, by the church. This is, the Liturgy of the Hours is the official prayer of the Catholic Church.
I was just curious, is that where that service pulls it from though?
Yeah. Yeah, because
Vespers at 6, is Vespers at 6 over here?
Yeah,
6?
I think it's 6. You'd have to check.
That was always, well, I think we've talked about which one you use, because if you use the Christian prayer book,
Yeah.
and if somebody has it on their phone, like Greg or something, sometimes you're saying a different song,
Sometimes they're a little bit
and
different.
you're lost. I mean, sometimes the antiphons are different. So, what do you
Sometimes
say?
they are.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do is to take one and pass it back. I'll go with this now. The best thing to do is to get one, like say, if you want me to print one off and then I'll give you a copy, you get it printed off.
This is for Robert, everybody got Robert's.
Here.
Thank you.
If you could email us that information.
Paul? On this one, we're missing the last few pages. It goes from 174 to 179.
You're missing a couple. Yeah. That's the one, what one is it?
That's the one, the Owen Cummings excerpt from the Deacon Reader.
Well, it should actually go to 183, 181.
Yeah, it's just
179.
174 to
There's some missing
179.
in
I only got to
between.
174.
But there's some
I'll tell you
missing
what,
in between.
that was a printer thing this morning.
Okay,
Sammy, we'll get it afterwards.
thank you.
These are the deacon contracts. Every deacon needs to have, this is USCCB, actually this is out of Rome, but the USCCB has adapted this, and we have contracts here. We have now changed that contract a little bit, and we have aligned it with, because it wasn't aligned that way before, it was aligned with the date of ordination. So if you were ordained in January, that contract came due in 2 years, your first contract, in January, 2 years later. The priests in this diocese, we move them every year, but they sign 6-year agreements, and we move them all of the moves that we make are at the end of July for the 1st of August. So now, we have aligned the deacon contracts to go for a 3-year period, and they will all coincide with that July 31st, August 1st, start and stop date.
Is there much deacon movement?
Not a lot, no. Not unless, some people, some request it,
Yeah.
you know, this, and most guys like to stay in their home parish. So the priest might change and the deacons probably won't. So there's, you know, if you're interested, you can now go through this. This is a very, very, very bland contract. Liturgical services, how many hours a week? Roughly 10 to 20, you're gonna work more anyway. Functioning is schedule masses, homilies, at how many times, and so forth. This doesn't have to be in great detail. To be determined as needed, things like this, fills this out. This is a canonical requirement to have this in the file, and so this is where we're at. There is no structure, wage structure for deacons. Some parishes will compensate the deacons somehow, varies from pastor to pastor, parish to parish. If there is any type of compensation, mileage, something like this, we need to have that information in there. There's a section on that. And then talking about personal accountability and family leave. One thing we do not want to have happen is for the deacon to get into a situation where he works every weekend.
I was just gonna ask about that.
No.
You know, it's sort of,
What we suggest, we don't suggest, the contract calls for, and this is in line with canon law, at least one weekend a month that is the deacon's. The deacon's not assigned to any of the liturgies. Okay? Because you have to have a little bit of family time.
yeah.
Speaking of time, I'm running out. And that, so you can't work for the church every weekend and still have family time.
I was gonna ask you about that, because I mean, the very first day we came here, Father Ken came down, Father Piapondo.
Yep.
And he said, you know, obviously you were married before you joined the diaconate, your father's before you joined the diaconate, your grandfather's before the diaconate, and the church wants you to be those things. But and I understand that, and I think there isn't anybody here that doesn't want to serve. I think that can also be abused. And I was gonna ask you, is that something that's self-inflicted by a lot of these deacons? 'Cause I know
Yes.
some deacons that just, like, oh, I'm there every day, they're
Yeah.
going 100 miles an hour. It's
Yes.
like, slow down, guy. And I know other
Everybody-
deacons, it's like you said, I just do one weekend, that's the only thing I, and now that's their prerogative. There's some happy medium there sometimes, but.
One of the biggest
It's almost
things
like-
we have when a deacon gets ordained in this is they're excited to be a deacon, so they're going to do everything. They're gonna do everything. And they're gone Monday through Friday at this meeting and that meeting, or RCIA or something else, and, sorry about that.
Class is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have time to wrap it up.
And so they go and they go and they go, and all of a sudden, they have a wife and family sitting at home that never see them. This is one of the problems, and it's self-inflicted, that you have to be aware of, and you cannot let happen. There's a great chapter in this book, page 94, Diaconal Marriage.
Oh, I read it, I think it was
Read
really
it.
good,
Yeah, great.
It's a great
section.
chapter, but you can't, your responsibilities to your family are important, okay? The diaconate is not more important than those responsibilities. It's a melding of the two.
Yeah.
There's a second problem that comes into play here, and this is just, and it happens from time to time, we have to watch. The deacon is ordained. You're ordained as the deacon, not your wife or your family. So to expect them to go through everything with you is not a realistic way to approach this. There's got to be an understanding between all the partners involved, especially with children, as to how this is going to affect you. because a deacon can get so wrapped up in his parish that he's going all the time, and all of a sudden, the family has a problem. He has a problem with the family. Once you get a problem with your family, you're gonna have a problem with your diaconate, because it'll drive you nuts. So,
Yeah.
these things, once again, this period of next couple of years of discernment, these are the things that you need to think about. Rules for the diaconate. The dysfunctional deacon, great chapter, starts on 106. Deacons can get involved with ritualisms. I'm gonna be really good at liturgies. I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And he becomes more important than the priest in the liturgies. That shouldn't happen. Clericalism. This is one of my favorites. An excessive consciousness of being a deacon, a sense of superiority flowing from membership in the clerical club, and a failure to appreciate the sacraments as they should be. To answer your question earlier in the day, this is a letter that has not been, this is a letter that went out under the signature of Bishop John Wester when he was here. It deals with the wearing of clerics, the collar. This is a revised letter